Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make Texas style brisket in an offset smoker. So our first job is going to be to build a fire. So we're going to get started on that. I've got my charcoal chimney ready, a few fire lighters, a lighter, and then if you're going to be using lump charcoal or briquettes to get it started, go ahead and get some of them too. Right, so in our firebox, we're going to lay down a few fire lighters. Going to get them lit up. And then we've got a full chimney of briquettes we're going to lay on top. And we can also open up this side firebox door just so there's plenty of oxygen in there. So we've got about 10 to 15 minutes now before our briquettes will be ready. So we're going to get this brisket sorted. We've got a full pack of brisket here. It's about 6 kilos in total. It's a Wagyu cross, so there's plenty of intramuscular fat in there. So we'll get started by trimming this up. Right, so you can see how much intramuscular fat is in there. Very nicely marbled. So we're going to get started by trimming off any excess fat and silver skin. Honestly, that amount on the flat side, I'm not going to need to trim too much off there. On this point end, you've always got a big pocket of fat here. So we're going to go ahead and get that removed. And don't throw any of your fat away, especially on a Wagyu brisket like this. You can always save your fat, render it down, and it makes the perfect beef tallow. And then any of your brisket trims in general makes for the perfect burger mince. So on a highly marbled brisket like this, you can afford to trim off a little bit more excess fat. If you had a really lean sort of standard Angus brisket, then you want to try and leave a bit more fat on there. Right, so I'm pretty happy with this bottom side. There is obviously that pocket of fat there between the point and the flat, but you don't want to trim out too much, otherwise you start losing the shape of your brisket. So now we'll get started on this top half. And again, this really doesn't need too much. As you flap here, you can either leave that on or you can just trim that off like so. Again, perfect mince trimmings. A little bit of excess fat on top here. Just going to tidy up this a little bit here. If I left that little slit there, you'd probably get juices that would pull up in there. And what I might even do when the brisket's on is put a little bit of foil or something underneath so any juice or rendered fat will run off as opposed to pulling up. A little bit off here. All right, I'm really happy with that. Now let's get it seasoned up. So on a Texas style brisket, season it with salt and pepper only. So I've got a 50-50 mix of cracked black pepper and kosher salt. So kosher salt is a less intense salt. It really complements the meat rather than making it taste salty. And trust me, salt and pepper is all you need on something like this. You will be amazed at the flavors it brings out when it works with that rendered fat and the smoke. It is absolutely magical. You'll feed someone this brisket seasoned with salt and pepper only, and they'll think there's so many more ingredients in there. So we're going to go ahead and get this seasoned up. So sprinkle it from a height so you get a nice even coverage. You're going to make sure you lift up your ends and get the whole brisket covered. And we'll flip it over and do the underside. Flip it back over, and now we're all seasoned up. So we're all trimmed and seasoned up now, so let's check our briquettes and see if we're ready to start building this fire. Yep, so our briquettes are ready. So we'll take them out. Make sure you got some high heat gloves on. I'm going to chuck our charcoal basket in, and then we'll pour our briquettes in. Now if you don't have a charcoal basket, you can pour your briquettes on this side of the firebox. Just make sure you've got your firebox door closed so they don't fall out. And then to get started, we're going to get a couple of our wood splits on. We've got some beautiful iron bark here. Let's get one of them on for now. And I've built our fire on this side of the firebox just so there's less direct heat coming through our firebox and into our cooking chamber. So now that log's caught fire, we're going to close our firebox door. We're going to open up our chimney stack, but we're going to leave our firebox door open for now. So the key to using an offset smoker is maintaining a clean burning fire. Now you can see this smoke here, it is clear, thin, blue looking smoke. That's exactly what you want when you're cooking. If you've got heavy white smoke, that means that your fire is potentially smothering. So make sure you've got quality wood that's seasoned properly. Make sure you're not putting too much wood on your fire, otherwise you're potentially smothering it. Or you might be getting that thick white smoke because your fire doesn't have enough oxygen. So Don't be afraid to open up your firebox door or your side door throughout the cook. And like I said, really make sure you've got that clean burning fire. And another really important tip to help maintain a clean burning fire is to preheat your next logs on top of your firebox so they catch alight much quicker and burn cleaner. Right, so our fire's sitting nice and stable now. You're going to get a much different reading to your top temperature gauges as opposed to at grate level. So we're at 250 Fahrenheit or 120 Celsius on the grate level, and we're at 300 and 375 here. So always try and get a meat probe on your grate level until you really understand your smoker. And eventually, after some experience, you'll know that a certain number on the lid means this number on the grate level. So let's get this brisket on. All right, so you can see our temperature probe here. Set up some drip trays down below, as you can see. Now I'm positioning the point end towards the firebox as it's thicker and there's much more intramuscular fat in there to absorb that heat. If you want to stick a probe in each end as well, go for it. Well, we're going to get this lid closed and this brisket smoking. Now we're going to look to maintain our smoker temperature at around the 250 Fahrenheit or 120 Celsius range. And I'm not going to stress if it drops to 225 or goes up to 300 or so. It's going to happen. You're going to get temperature spikes when you put a fresh log on. But if it does start getting a little bit out of control and my temperatures get a little bit too high, I'm going to slowly shut down the side firebox door vent a little bit, but not so much that it chokes your fire. And if your temperatures are really out of control, you've probably put a little bit too much fuel on. So a couple of little splits like this is perfect for a smoker this size. Something like that is potentially a little bit too big. So make them fire management decisions based on what type of smoker you have. If you have something smaller and thinner than this, one log will probably do the trick. If you have something a lot bigger than this, a lot thicker, then something like that will probably do the trick. So each log is going to last around 30 to 45 minutes. You need to make sure you keep preheating your logs. That's going to really help maintain a clean burning fire like I mentioned before. So we're going to keep our smoker sitting nice, stable and clean burning. If you wanted to delve a bit deeper into offset smoker fire management, I'll chuck a link down in the description for you to check out. And we're going to come back now once we're happy with the bark on this brisket, which will probably be in a few hours. And we're going to be looking for an internal temperature of around the 160 Fahrenheit or 71 degrees Celsius internal mark. So our brisket's been smoking away for about 2.5 hours now. So I just want to open up our smoker, have a look at the brisket, see how the bark's coming along, see how far away we are from wrapping it up, and also check for any pooling on the brisket as well. So let's open up our smoker and have a look. Oh, that is looking amazing. So we are getting some pooling on the point end there and a little bit in the flat over here. So what I've got, like I mentioned earlier, if you've got some foil, I've just wrapped a foil core in the foil, and we're just going to place that back here, gently lift our brisket up and just lift it up like that so any excess moisture will run off. We'll have a quick check of the internals while we're here too. So we're at about 150-ish in the thickest part, so I reckon we're not too far off wrapping this up, maybe another hour, so we'll come back then. Right, it's been another hour. Let's have another look at this brisket and I reckon we'll be ready to wrap it up. Alright, so that bark is looking awesome. Still got a little bit of pooling there, but sometimes you can't help that. So let's get it out and wrapped up. So we're using butcher's paper today to help preserve that bark. So let's wrap this up nice and tight and get it back in the smoker. So we'll get rid of our foil now. We'll place our brisket back in, still with the point end towards the firebox, and we'll chuck a couple of probes in now too. And we'll close our lid. So now our brisket is wrapped and back in the smoker. All we need to do now is continue to maintain that steady, clean burning fire. And then our next job is to check for tenderness. Now we're going to start probing for tenderness at around that 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius internal mark. I assume that's going to take another 2 to 4 hours to get there, so we'll be back once we hit that stage. So we are 8 hours into this cook now and we have just about hit our target internal temperature. Now I have rotated the brisket as the point was cooking a bit faster than the flat as it was towards the fire, so don't hesitate to do that if you think you need to even it up a bit. So let's open up our smoker, unwrap this brisket and start checking for probe tenderness. So here's our temperatures at the moment. Pit's at 280. The flat's at 204 and the point's at 207. Alright, take these probes out now. That is actually probing really nice all over. I'm happy to get this out now. So now our brisket's done, let's talk about resting. Now, if you were really short on time and you had guests coming over, you can just let this rest at room temperature for half an hour, slice and serve it. It's not ideal, but it'll still come out really nice. But I would definitely recommend getting your brisket out, letting it steam off for a few minutes to stop that cooking process, and then wrapping it back up in your butcher's paper or your foil, whatever you've wrapped it in, and let it rest in a cooler for at least an hour. And that'll stay warm for 3, 4, or even 5 hours, especially if you wrap a towel around it too. So we'll come back once we're ready to slice and serve this brisket. All right, now let's slice this brisket. You want to make sure you always slice against the grain, so take note of that before you start cooking. And we're just going to slice some pencil thin slices, starting on the flat end. So we'll keep slicing until we get a bit more into the point. Right, so now we're into the point. See, the point muscle runs off this way. We're going to turn it and we're going to slice this way. That's where you get them beautiful fatty slices from. Or you can remove the point, you can dice it up, make some burnt ends out of it. So there's our point. We've still got a bit of the point muscle here. So what we can do is take that off and dice these up. And if you wanted to chuck some barbecue sauce on them, put them back in the smoker until the sauce tacks up, then go ahead. Seriously, look at that. Absolute magic. And then the flat we're left with, we can go ahead and continue slicing that the same way we were slicing the flat just before. And there you go, that's how you slice it. Probably my favourite part of the brisket. A nice fatty point slice. Let's have a taste. Now, I'm going for this end piece. Wow. Wow. That has got to be one of the tastiest bites of brisket I've had in a very, very long time. That just melts in your mouth. That is so unbelievably good. Now, don't forget, every brisket is going to be different and they're going to be done at different internal temperatures. That's why I always favor probe tenderness when I'm cooking brisket. So that's the end of the video, guys. I just wanted to say thanks for watching. I wouldn't do barbecue videos like this if it wasn't for all your support. So again, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. That is so good.